Right now, the hardest vegetable flowers, I think the most difficult vegetable flowers that I do are on the turnips and the beet, and these are roses. So I'm going to do a turnip rose first of all. And what I'm going to do with the turnip rose is cut the stem end off. This is the stem end, the part that grows up out of the soil. This is the root end, the part that grows down into the earth. So you're going to cut this off, and you're going to notice a kind of a ring here. It's just going to give you a guideline for forming the base of the flower. That's going to be the bottom, and this is going to be the sides of the first row of petals. So I come in at an angle from the side, hold my knife at an angle, and cut all the way around. I'm trying to be nice and smooth so it's a nice round circle, not any kind of facets on it. Then if I flip that over, remember my thumb is on the base. This is going to be the top or the top of the flower. I'm going to start just inside of the skin. So I can't come up on the skin or I'll get a purple edge to it and it'll be very flat. But if I come inside that and keep my knife at a high bias, you can see the shape. A nice, beautiful curve to the outside shape of each one of those petals. Turn it just enough that you can get 5 petals. And once those 5 petals are cut, then you're going to come in between these 2 petals at a more severe angle, almost straight up, not quite straight up and down, but a little bit higher bias than the first initial cut. And as you come around, you're gauging the depth of the cut by using your knuckle along the side of the blade so you don't cut in too deep. If you cut in too deep, you'll cut off the petals. So you can't cut in too deep. You want to cut just to the base of the previous row of petals and come all the way around. When you remove this product, you're going to see that the first row of 5 petals has been exposed. You can also tell that the angle has been changed. Now the angle of the next row of petals is slightly more straight up and down. Once again, don't cut up into the skin, just below the skin, cut 5 petals. Notice that they're inside or between the previous row of 5 petals. Nice and thin on the petals and nice and thick on the wedge of material that comes around the outside. So once again, I've gauged the depth by using my knuckle, and I'm coming around like this, and you're going to see now that I have almost a cylinder. And so I started with a very wide cone and then narrower cone. Now I'm almost at a cylinder. At this point, I can cut away the rest of this because I'm not going to keep going up. I need to actually come down inside the flower from this point on. So I can cut off the excess of this, and it'll help my carving a little bit. So then another row of 5 petals from in between the previous row. Another wedge of material, and what that's going to do is actually cause the cone to go in the opposite direction as when it was previous. So you see the cone is starting to come in. So what's happening is the outside petals are slowly coming in to form the cone in the center of the flower. So once again, we're going to cut on the outside of that. 5 petals. Wedge of material comes out from behind there. I can't use my knuckle anymore, so I'm using the tip of my thumb to kind of gauge the depth. Cut all the way around, remove the product. Another row of 5 petals. They're getting smaller, but they're still very thin. And then the final cone, that leaves a very sharp point in the middle of the flower. And what I'm going to do is come down on the 3 sides of that point with a straight cut. So one there, and then one that joins those 2 sides together. And what I can do is use the tip of my knife, kind of bend that petal out, and then cut off that little triangle of material that's inside. And that's going to show, a very nice looking, realistic looking flower. Okay, so I'm going to show you the same thing on the beet. This one gets, of course, a lot messier. Therefore, it's more fun. So using the same kind of imagery where the core of that's going to be, I'm going to start around so the tip of my knife comes into the center, and then I'm just going to focus on trying to keep a nice round base to this flower. Okay, below the skin, we're going to slide our knife in and form the petals. 5 petals, and we come around again using the knuckle as a guide to make sure that we don't cut in too deep, and we're cutting a little bit higher bias cut. 5 more petals. In between the previous row. At this point, when we've made our second row of petals, we can cut off a lot of the beet. We don't need to have that. It's just going to kind of get into our way. And then we're going to cut the next row, or the next wedge of material out from behind those petals. Being careful not to cut too deep, but I want to cut so that I do hit the base of the previous petals. We're just going to work our way into the center. And then in the very center, we're going to carve those 3 sides of that petal, and then break that out. So that's going to form the center of the flower. Now, if you do some that are red and some that are white, then you're able to do this technique, which is take a little bit of the beet and rub it across the tips of the white flower, and you get something that really has a lot more contrast and color to it. And I've had people pick this up and smell it, and yes, it smells just like a turnip.